and they've lost some of what they define as their essence, right? And Peter in this is encouraging them to live a life together, but also to live in love. Like to live loving the people around you, which is often different than we think when we live, when we kind of lose our identity, when we lose who we are, right? And so that's kind of what this is about. It's about living a life together, even in tough times, because it's so easy to just pull aside and just live by yourself. And sometimes we believe that's the path of righteousness. But my argument is that it's not. That our paths of righteousness are when we live with our Lord, when we live with the body of Christ, when we live together. So 2009 was kind of a big year. Kind of. Were there any big Michael Jackson fans in the crowd? Nobody. In the back. All right. At least you guys are honest about it. Like that's yeah. I mean, Michael Jackson is kind of the king of pop, right? Like he's the king. He was the unequivalent, like best ever at that. And back in 2009, he was getting ready for a new tour of his, and that tour was going to be called This Is It. And it was going to be this whole idea of like this. He was going to show that he was the king of pop. No one was better than him. Like it was going to be the best show and just go into the history books as being the best tour in the world. I had a friend named Matt who was super excited about this. Big music fan. He was probably the biggest Prince fan I've ever seen. Like that. But he had tickets for this event. I was in seminary when this was all going down, and it was going to be this big, huge tour all over the world from the King of Pop to solidify that that's who he was. But what happened? He died, right? He died, and then like the tour kind of died with it, right? I remember my friend Matt was in deep sadness, because of this, and he's like, man, that tour would have been amazing, and Michael Jackson is gone forever. And what's interesting is what kind of came about all the work from that tour being created is they ended up creating a music documentary about that tour being created called This Is It. Has anyone seen that? Nobody? I think that proves my point. But that's the only little bit I've seen of it was that came out on Blu-ray when I was on my vicarage, and I remember being in a CompUSA looking for things, and they had it playing on every screen available in the entire store. They had it going because I think it had just come out. But it's a music documentary about what could have been, right? It's a music documentary about what could have happened there, and it all just kind of it kind of leaves you with this feeling of like, well, that could have been good, maybe. Right? And it's kind of an interesting documentary because I looked and I tried to find a bunch of lists from experts, whatever that means, about like rankings of music documentaries. And this one isn't on anybody's list of like the best music documentaries. I'm sure it's on somebody's list. I'm sure it's somewhere on Facebook. Someone's like, it's the best ever. But like of like Billboard and all these people, it's not really there. And then we look at the history of Michael Jackson since then, and it's just like and like back like when you look at through the eyes of my friend Matt, when he was getting ready for that tour, he was like, yeah, that's right, this is it right here. And then, like, kind of afterwards, you kind of look at it, and I see all of your responses in the room like that. And you're like, this is it? Like that, right? Like, is this it? This is it? Like that's, and I think that's kind of, I think we struggle in that a lot. That there's a lot of things that are sold to us as, this is it. This is it right here. Put everything you have right here, right? Like that's, and it could have been a myriad of different things that you were sold to in your life as this is it. Like it could be like your work. Like when you're going to go to work and you'll be successful and everything will go well for you. As soon as you get a promotion, get that promotion, work hard and you'll be happy. And I've talked to a lot of people that have given up a lot of things in their life for work and for this or that, and they don't know their family. You ask them, it's like, what were you doing? It's like, all right, they're like, this is it. I'm going to give it all up for so that my family can have a better existence. And then all they do is work and work and work and work and work, and they don't really know their family anymore. Or maybe you listen to the vision where some people are like, this is it, and you're like, I can't wait to become a parent. And that day finally happens. Like, this is it. And then the kids turn 2. And all they eat is macaroni and cheese and chicken nuggets. And all they're doing is screaming constantly. And you ask yourself, is this it? This is it? And then you're expecting it to get better. And then, they turn 16. And it's the third day in a row that you've had the door slammed in your face. And again, you're like, man, it would have been fun to have a little 16-year-old buddy. And again, you're asking, this is it? This is it? Right here? There's all of these things that we go through. I mean, or you build a big building, right? And you're like, this is going to be it. Everyone's going to see us up on the road. Everything's going to be amazing. And all of a sudden, the debt starts piling on. There's not enough money to pay everything. And all of a sudden, you're like, oh no. Is this it? Is this it? If you guys know my history at all, I've come from a few churches now, one in particular, where we had tons of debt. We had tons of debt. And that was the conversation each and every meeting, week, of what do we do with all that debt, right? Or maybe it's, and this kind of harkens back to the confession a little bit, but maybe you've listened to the dream of this is it. It's all about being right and being successful, right? That you need to abandon everything else. You got to be correct and you got to be successful. Those are the two things. But the problem is that when you are constantly correct and you are constantly successful in winning arguments and all that stuff, in order to win arguments, oftentimes you have to push people aside. And it often leaves us on a throne of correctness and righteousness all by ourselves. One of the things that when you look at new books about what's going on in society right now, there's rampant loneliness. I don't know if you guys watch SNL. There was a funny joke by John Mulaney to not last night, but the night before, last week's SNL. And he goes, the biggest miracle that Jesus did is that he had 12 close friends that he hung out with all the time. And that's speaking to something as a joke about kind of where we are. And I think it stems from this idea of we have this vision, we have this is it, is if I can just be correct. Or right, or whatever, then I'll finally get it. And I think after you sit on your throne of correctness, because believe me, I've sat on a few thrones of correctness, and I've looked around, and I've been like, this is it? This is it? I mean that's, and I think that's kind of where we are today. I mean, you look around, we just see there's a lot of toxicity about things that are this is it. I don't know, let's see, I do know. Everyone in here watches a lot of cable news. Like this is the way things are, right? Like that's just, it's over there. But I saw, right now when you watch them, we have an election season coming up. And you watch all the cable news ads for themselves, and how are they advertising right now? They're like, this is the biggest election ever. It's going to change everything. You need to watch us all the time, right? They're basically saying, this is it. You got to watch it. What are they saying? Like, please watch this ad so they may make us money, right? I have a feeling that if you see the news getting self-important like that, you should probably turn it off. Because I think you'll end up later on going, man, I really got caught up in all of that. And I was a part of stuff that I don't like. But I felt like it was it. And I think you'll end up later going, maybe it wasn't it. You'd be like, this is it? I think a good biblical story that shows us this is actually the thieves on the cross. This is a photograph of the day from that. The thieves on the cross, and it's an interesting look at this story about this. This is it. The first thief, he talks to Jesus, and he says this. One of the criminals that were hanging railed at him. Let's talk about the criminals here. Like when I was little, I always thought the criminals on the cross were like criminals that like Aladdin stealing a loaf of bread, right? Like that's not why they're on there. Like why in the world would Rome kill someone on a cross? It's a very public execution. That's an execution that is sending a message, right? You're sending a message to a group of people. These guys on the cross are revolutionaries, most likely. Or what we call in this country revolutionaries, we call them terrorists. Right? So they most likely were terrorists, right? That's what Barabbas was. He was over there. So one of the criminals is saying, like, aren't you the Messiah? That's what Christ means in Greek, by the way. Aren't you the Messiah? Save us and yourself. So what is he saying there? Is he saying like really like just save us all, Jesus? We all want to sing Kumbaya together and be together here, right? Is he saying that? Like no. I think he's being kind of selfish there. He's like, if you're really who you say you are, get yourself off the cross and save us. And save us here. That kind of reminds me of, that sounds a lot like Jesus in the wilderness, right? When Satan comes to Jesus and tempts him, right? Throw yourself off the temple there. It sounds like that, doesn't it? Or and I look at that, and he's not really talking about saving us. He's just like, just save me, Jesus. And the other one looks at him and says, the other one rebukes him. He's like, don't you fear God, since you're under the same sentence and condemnation? And we indeed justly, for we are receiving the due reward for our deeds. But this man has done nothing wrong. And he said to Jesus, remember me. Remember me. Remember me. And Jesus looked at him and said, truly I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise. It's not a sarcastic us. It's not a sarcastic, like, oh, you need to save us. Jesus looks at him and goes, you will be with me. You and me will be together in paradise. And I think that criminal ends up walking away with, yeah, this is it. This is it. The other criminal was constantly saying, this is it. And this one was going, yeah, this is it. And I think this is something that Peter is saying in our reading that Linda read just a little bit ago. He says this. And I'm going to read this full thing, and then I'm going to go into a part of it. But blessed be God the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. According to His great mercy, He has caused us to be born again to a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. An inheritance that is imperishable, undefiled, unfading, kept in heaven for you. An inheritance, imperishable, undefiled, and unfading. I think a lot of times when we look at the desires of the world and sometimes our own sinful desires, it's all stuff that'll fade. You know, it's like what can I accrue? What can I acquire? What can I get? You know, it's all these things that what can I just grab, more, and it's all stuff that is imperishable, right? It's all stuff that is perishable, defiable, that can fade, like the flower fades, right? Like it's all of that, but I want to point your attention to there right at the beginning of it. And it says, He has caused us to be born again. There's so many times I feel like the Christian message is one of you or I. I must believe the right things in order for Jesus to love me. That I must do this. But when you begin to look at the message, you begin to see not so many I's, not so many U's, but you begin to see a lot of plurals. You begin to see us. That Jesus comes to the people of God in this place. That He has caused us to be born again. And I got to tell you guys, and I think that's it, right there. And I think when you look back at your time where you spent with us, where you spent in relationships forgiving, I think you can say, oh, that's it. That's it. There it is. Like so for things like your job. Like your job, don't get so wrapped up in constantly trying to climb the ladder, but rather love your coworkers and the clients and the people you're working with. You know, for your family, don't be so obsessed with making sure that you're perfect. Listen, all your grandkids and your kids that have kids, don't worry about them being terrible parents. They're just getting it from you anyway. I'm glad you guys laughed at that. That was a risk. That was a risk. They're just getting, don't worry about it. Just love them. Just love them. Enjoy Christmas and Easter and whenever they feel like coming to Disney World to see you. Right? Like that's, like, enjoy them, you know? Like, let's not just build buildings to build buildings, but rather let's build them for what and who they're going to serve and help and bring life to. Like, let's not obsess about being right all the time, but rather let's lower ourselves like Jesus Himself did, so that when we can live life together. That we can live as people not like, oh, I'm correct all the time, but as people we love all the time. We forgive all the time. And I think that's a body life together because that is what Christ has done for us. That we who were sinful, who put Him on the cross, He caused us to be born again